Recent hiring spree. Oh, wait a minute. The mic is wrong. Hold on. The mic is here. My apologies. Can you hear me better now? That should be better. All right. So bottom line is this, and it is plugged in, right? Yeah, it is good to go. All right. So I may have to redo this video, but we're already started, so I'll just clip the beginning of it. Bottom line is this. About 2 months ago, the agencies that are like the union, groups that oversee the employees of the SSA have had very scary negative things to say, in that the management is not doing what they need to do to keep employees, get new employees, push more employees forward, etc. So as a result of that, the problem that we're running into, unfortunately, is that this is going to hurt your benefits. It's going to hurt your retention of benefits. It's going to hurt the ability of these checks to consistently go out. It is a very, 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 very tricky thing with this whole situation. So here we go. Social Security Administration's recent hiring spree simply isn't enough to stem the agency's decades-long ebb in staffing or to improve agency backlogs. Officials with the nation's largest federal employee union said Wednesday at a rally on Capitol Hill. The American Federation of Government Employees has been sounding the alarm about the agency's staffing crisis for more than a year. Most recently, last April, the Social Security Administration staffing levels are at a 25-year low, despite an ever-increasing number of beneficiaries. That higher workload distributed among fewer workers has led in part to high-profile committee government operations and the Federal Workforce Subcommittee hosting a hearing on customer service at 3 agencies, including the SSA, after the rally Wednesday. But put another way, basically, out of all of the agencies of the government, there's 3 that are doing really poorly, and those 3 have the SSA on them. So the bottom line is they're trying to figure out how to fix these 3 agencies. Agency leaders are in the midst of a hiring spree fueled by more than $700 million in new funding appropriated for fiscal 2023 and a new special hiring authority from the Office of Personnel Management, hoping to relieve some of the pressure on employees. Quote, "We're using social media, going to job fairs, and getting referrals and resumes from interested applicants through common job application platforms like Handshake and Indeed," said Acting Commissioner Keila Kijikazi. That was back in the day of basically 2023. On an agency podcast last month, "If you or anyone you know is interested in coming to work with us, let them know. We're hiring and it's easier to apply. We're really focused on recruiting and hiring efficiently." Now, the bottom line with this whole situation, just so you guys understand it, is that this article was all the way back, essentially a year ago. And the problem is that we know the agency is not catching up. We know the agency is getting even further and further and further behind. And the ironic thing about it is that the government could fix this. They could offer new things to government employees at the, basically the federal, Senate and the House level. But the problem that we run into with this situation is that, unfortunately, just to be fair, no matter what they really start to pay these individuals, the government isn't prepared to afford them. And that's the big thing, is that it appears that people at the SSA, they're constantly trying to hire, but they're not able to retain the people that join up. They leave. They don't want to continue to be a part of this. So as a result of all of this, I don't know what the future will hold, but I know that the SSA keeps making the DDS timelines of wait times for an adjudication. They seem to be getting a little bit worse and a little bit worse and a little bit worse. They're not getting better. Now, I have noticed, to be fair, that the wait times for phone calls and answering phone calls has gotten better. So, to be fair, you're going to see them improve here, improve there, and things like that, and hopefully get to the spot they want to be. You're going to see some areas do better than others. That's just how it is when you're managing a massive corporation such as the Social Security Administration. But the wait time for the DDS wait times is terrible. It's absolutely horrible. With falling budgets and staffing levels to meet public demand, the workers that remain are, in a word, demoralized, left with feeling overworked, underpaid, and undervalued, she said. And the AFGE member poll shows over 50% of respondents are still considering leaving the agency within the next year. The reason employees are citing toxic levels of work-related stress as they struggle to control impossible workloads. So here's what happens when an agency goes into fail and bail mode. Okay, the agency doesn't have enough employees. So normally you would have enough employees and, basically like the quota of how many you could have as a maximum, you'd only be getting like this much. You'd be getting like just above 2/3, of that max, of that, potential amount, right, of clients that you have to work on. And the thing is, to be fair with this whole situation, instead of that, these employees have maximum workload that they've got to deal with. Now, as a result of that, because there's so few employees and they're all on maximum workload, they're getting burned out. They're getting pushed to complete as many as they can. They're not getting as much as done as they can. They're starting to go through their burnout rollout, and it's just not good. My feeling at this point, is that the SSA is not going to be able to survive to release benefits to people in a traditional, repetitive manner unless they improve what they actually pay the government employees. Can the government afford increasing what they pay all these government employees? I think not. I think part of the game of why they, basically do things with the cost of living adjustment, they'll sell off massive amounts of oil. They'll make sure there's a bunch of some product in the country during those magic 3 months of COLA calculations to reduce the likelihood of the price going up for those items that are counted in the COLA cost of living adjustments. I think the reality here, to be fair, is that the government is very fearful of government employees actually getting together and asking and demanding more. And there are a lot of tight things that happen with this, because if anybody were to do something like, they would go on strike, they would automatically never be eligible again to go ahead and work for the government. Not that that's a bad thing. They could go work somewhere else, because the bottom line is the government's not really able to pay them very well. But what we're seeing is a failed economy. Right? An economy that we knew was going to be rough coming out of COVID, but also I think we all agree that there was some mismanagement at the highest levels. And I know some of you are like deep in the Biden's perfect and Biden's amazing. I know you're deep in that. I get it. But when you lift your head up from that powder puff right there, I just study it. You will realize what happened with the petrodollar. You will realize what happened with farmers. You will be surprised, or you'll ignore it completely, play the jaded card, and just come out with BS. But the bottom line is, if you do wake up from that, you'll see that there was an abuse of marketplace use. So as a result of that, what I hope you understand is that we need all of the people of America to earn more and have a better standard of living. We are on track for the opposite of that. We are on track for the potential of a world war situation, which will get a lot of Americans back to work for sure, no doubt about it. We're also on track for what will absolutely occur, no doubt about it. There will have to be some sort of demand by the government for Americans of a certain age group to join the armed forces. We'd have to have it. We'd have to have it, right? Because there's super low numbers right now. Every single branch of the military is just sucking wind right now. They don't have enough people to go ahead and fill their training programs. So the point is, a draft is almost absolute if things keep going the way that they are with some sort of war-based engagement. In fact, Russia just came back and said, look, if you're going to supply Ukraine with all these toys to go directly into Russia, which they're doing right now, then that is basically our grounds for, basically a World War III. And in his wording, his terminology, or rather his assistant's terminology, was that the war, the theater of it all, won't be limited to Europe, and that it will make it over to the United States. Because, a lot of Americans, to be fair, and I love Americans, I love the fact that they have been allowed to live in a reality that does not actually match the reality of what's going on Earth. But a lot of Americans, they live in this spacey world where they don't have to worry about war. They don't have to worry about these massive military incursions. They're promoting these ideas of, anti-gun, nobody can have pistols, nobody can have firearms, stuff like that. They're promoting these ideas. They wouldn't have those ideas if they actually had to deal with war, if they actually had to deal with what's going on in different parts of the world, if they had to deal with like real extreme hatred that they have, where groups would literally find them, hunt them, and deal with them. What my people ran away from in Germany, Austria, and Ukraine in the World War II situation. So you got to understand something real quick here. What's happening with this situation is we have a government that's not paying people a fair wage. And as a result, people say, no, I don't want to do this anymore. And there's this timeline problem. Because if the government can get somebody to work far enough into it, their boots are stuck in the muck. They can't get out of it because they've got golden handcuffs on that holds them to reach that retirement pension option. But you probably noticed a lot of these options, including literally our military, the traditional 20-year, 25-year, 30-year pension programs, retirement option programs, they're gone now. They don't exist. That's why the military has all young men and old men. That's the reality here. All old men, all young men, nobody in between. So the point of it is, unfortunately, I think that we have lost the interest of the American people to serve the American government for a better America. I think that's issue number one. Issue number two, I think that Americans have an expectation of a higher standard of living. They want to be able to have, just to be fair, just to be straightforward, a nice phone, a usable car, right? They want to be able to have enough money to date somebody, enough money to have a child, to have a second child, to cover the cost of those child, enough money to buy a house, enough money to pay for a pool, enough money to go ahead and do things on the weekend. Almost all of those are completely out of reach now. Sounds weird, right? Like a boomer would be sitting there being like, what do you mean? That's how it is. No, all of those are out of reach now. That's one of the weird things, that there's like this disconnect between boomers and millennials, is that boomers lived in a time that was amazing. It was pre everything being made overseas, into the era of things being made overseas. And America was just this amazing juggernaut with unlimited potential, and it basically sold a lot of its potential away. As it did that, the problem was, we got to this point where we can't enjoy our weekends because they're too expensive. Our cars are all old, they're getting older. They're not reliable. The jobs don't pay enough, and then we're getting taxed a lot on top of that. So it is what it is. Inflation is far worse than the cost of living adjustment BS that they feed us. So we're kind of like, what the hell? What are we going to do? And now we're at this point where younger people don't really see the connection with working in America to achieve a better life, because there is no work hard and have a better life identity. It doesn't exist. Like, I know that's like how they sell younger people on really destroying their body and their mind to achieve higher amounts of wealth. Those, lines of logic, those roads not always traveled much, they're gone. They don't exist. Giant corporations buy up any potential, industries where you could create something. And if you do create something, the giant corporation will buy it up, take it, and basically convert it into its own corporate entity, and then it'll beat up whatever you created or buy you out. That's the reality. So the thing is, with this whole thing, I don't know what the government is going to do, but I know what they should do. They should immediately increase, House vote, Senate vote, presidential allowance. They should immediately increase what the actual federal government employees are earning, and the state government, if they can work with them to get it going, because otherwise they're not going to get enough people to go ahead and work at these government facilities. You have to understand too, some jobs have allure, right? Some jobs have that allure to them where it's like, ooh, work for the CIA. That's pretty cool. That's pretty amazing. Some jobs have that, like, wow, I really want that. I really want to be part of that, right? I want to be a secret agent, right? But working for the Social Security Administration doesn't have that unless you are a CDI, investigator who basically is an undercover secret police cop on behalf of the SSA. So just to give you a few more quotes from this article, the problem is that they just want to do the bare minimum, 4 meetings a year at the national level for 3 hours apiece. He said, I don't know about you, but we're not solving any major problems in only 12 hours a year. Our employees, as Jessica and others have stated, more than half of them have a foot out the door. They're actively looking for a better deal for themselves and for their families. Who can blame them? Next quote. We're making progress with our hiring, and this is, I'm guessing, from the SSA, even as a tight labor markets make it challenging to retain experienced employees and attract talented new ones. Poise said, this fiscal year through May 20th, we have made more than, this is 2023, made more than 2,000 net gains in our full-time permanent workforce, and we expect further gains due to the positive effects of direct hiring authority. We expect that starting in fiscal year 2024, as new hires become more proficient, they will help us reduce growing backlogs and improve service to the public. final quote that I'm going to read you guys. Regarding our employee unions, our approach to labor management relations goes far beyond the bare minimum, and we engage often with our unions to meet our bargaining obligations, he said. SSA voluntarily agreed to immediately modify 6 articles in the collective bargaining agreement with AFGE last summer and agreed to renegotiate 6 additional articles years ahead of their expiration. AFGE joined SSA in informing all employees that this was an important step forward. SSA and FAGE have now made progress in those negotiations, and SSA expects continued progress throughout the mutually agreed upon bargaining schedule. We are committed to good faith negotiations and optimistic for a deal that will advance both employee satisfaction and the public interest. Here's the bottom line. The SSA is stuck because they don't have enough money for new employees, right? They are losing experienced employees, which is why we're getting so many weird decisions and everything's taking so long and taking more time. The experienced employees are, that are staying have maximum capacity workload put on their shoulders. Like they're at max capacity. As many as can possibly be given to that person are being given to that person. This is interesting. We know he's done better with the phone calls because the phone calls are picking up faster. It's going much better. So something's going on there. The question I have, because DDS is just, it's taken way too long. They just don't have enough employees. Here's my question with this whole situation. Okay. How many employees from the SSA have been taken to allow review of SSI entrants, refugees, and other immigrants coming to this country, such as anybody who basically is facing harm or war in another country, somebody who is basically seeking a situation where they have to come here, otherwise potentially they'll be harmed. How many employees have been basically taken from the SSA and put onto this mass immigration protocol situation with the Biden administration? How many? I can't find any statistics or details on that. The only thing I found, which I decided to not do a video on because I was too worried about it, was how many new SSI people have been put on as a result of this massive immigration protocol, right? So my question is, if they are able to go ahead and think about it just for one moment, if they're able to go ahead and stop mass immigration through open borders, right? And then they catch up with the people once they're inside and they set them up and they sign them up and they, work with them for SSI, hundreds of thousands of potential individuals added to SSI. If they stopped massive immigration that is controlled in an uncontrolled way, if they stopped it, would the SSA be performing properly? And that's really what the question comes down to. That's really what is such a potential problem with this, is that we don't know essentially where in this spectrum this whole thing is going. And we know that statistically, some of the stats that we normally have, I think it was December of 2011 or 2021, they stopped producing data on new SSI immigrants coming to this country and going on the program. So the problem I have is, would we be okay if we just didn't do all this immigration stuff? We know it's vote farming. We know it's Democrat votes. We know all that stuff. But would we actually be okay? If we would have been okay, right, without having this massive immigration situation, we just would have cut that out. How many employees would we have been able to retain or just keep at the field offices, the regional field offices of the SSA, so that they weren't processing massive new immigrants? I'm not saying immigration is wrong. I'm purely just saying, look, it's too many. It's too fast. Too many of them are applying for SSI benefits. Too many of the staff members are not, working with the current actual American applicants. So the problem I have with this whole situation that I think is incredibly important is that if we don't have enough employees to process claims, right? If we don't have enough, what's causing that? Yeah, it's not enough high wages. Yeah, it's overworked. Yeah, the training programs aren't that great. Yeah, all that stuff. That's all in the article. Yeah. But what nobody is talking about is how many SSA employees are required to be taken and used specifically for immigration purposes. Let's say, okay, that it's a situation where if we fix that, right, Biden cuts, he re-welds the gates closed instead of welding them open. Let's say the Biden administration does that, going, with Harris and Harris becoming the president, stuff like that. Would the SSA face an immediate fix? And what's interesting is that the SSA's phone calls have gotten really good in a really short period of time, which makes me feel like this is all preparation for the election to make, potentially Vice President Harris look really, really good. At the same time, still the disability claims are just taking forever. Now, to be fair, Commissioner Martin O'Malley has done a lot of amazing things. He's gotten a lot of walls that slow things down, a lot of computer code changes that will go ahead and speed things up. So he's done a lot of great things. But I think the problem that we're facing with this situation is every time that we continue to allow immigrants to basically get an SSI check, and then you just multiply that by 1,000, multiply that by 10,000, multiply that by 100,000. That is such a large number. And look, just to give you some understanding. So let's say calculator, right? Let's do a quick calculator assessment, right? Here, I'll pull it up over here. Calculator. So if we go ahead and pull up the calculator, and we assume that, let's say, let's just do, the max payers. We can do a smaller amount, but let's say that there's 100,000, right? New SSIers, right? So 100,000. There you go. And then we multiply that by $943, right? So now we're talking, let's see. There you go. So 100,000 new SSIers at maximum $943 per month. We're looking at basically $94,300,000. And remember, that would just be for 1 month. That would just be for 1 month. That's one payment for the month for 100,000 new. And I know from what he stated in one of his videos that there's more than 100,000 new SSI entrants / refugees / asylum seekers. So the point is, if you multiply that by 12, that is a giant number. My goodness. That is $1,131,600,000 of new money for just 100,000 new immigrants going on SSI. My point is, a lot of these problems can be fixed by just fixing the bare unit that we have inside America. We have a lot of options. But the thing that worries me the most is that if we were to potentially have another 4 years of the Harris administration, and I'm curious to see what your thoughts are. Do you guys think that she would go ahead and continue mass immigration like she did? She was the leader of it during the Biden administration. Do you feel that she would continue to allow individuals to come into this country in kind of a very limited restriction sort of way? I think it's going to be interesting. Yeah, and Charlton Zimmerman made a good point, which is end of September is federal budget hearing, which I think is going to go very poorly. I think it's going to go very poorly. I think aspects of speeding things up is good. There's progress there. Martin O'Malley has done an amazing job with that. But I think the point of this video is to explain, look, we have a problem. I don't know what the direct solution to it is, but I know that massive immigration is extremely harmful, especially to the Social Security Administration when it comes to requiring employees to process SSI applications, and then the massive amount that actually gets paid out. Because remember, that's just 1 year for 100,000 new immigrant individuals receiving Social Security benefits in the form of supplemental security income. If you multiply that by 7 years, which is what they opt them into, let's multiply that by 7 years. What you end up with is hold on, give me a moment. $7,921,200,000. So over 7 years, just 100,000, it's more than 100,000 at this point, new immigrants on SSI. Just over 7 years of those individuals being promised under the program their 7-year plus 2-year potential option into, where they can add on. You're looking at almost $8 billion spent that we didn't need to spend. We just didn't need to spend that. So it's a very, very, very tricky situation. I don't know how they're going to fix it. I don't know what the future actually is. I don't know why we're in this situation to begin with or why they allowed it to happen this way. To be fair, my honest opinion is that President Biden set up Commissioner Martin O'Malley in almost like a fail situation. But he's done such an amazing job, Commissioner Martin O'Malley, not Biden, that he's been able to fix so many things. But I feel like if we didn't have Biden fighting him, like doing all these wrong things to the SSA, Commissioner Martin O'Malley would have been able to literally lead the success of the SSA beyond any agency. He's done just amazing, amazing work. The problem I foresee is that if we have more Harris style that's based on Biden, it's just going to continue to make, basically Commissioner Martin O'Malley be slow in his ability to fix things. But again, if Trump gets in, then Trump will fire Commissioner Martin O'Malley, which just is not good for anybody. Because trust me, Commissioner Martin O'Malley is very pro-claimant, not pro-SSA. Commissioner Saul was pro-SSA, not pro-claimant. So this is what concerns me about this problem. And this is an article from a year ago. And the point of it is that things are changing in a positive way, but they're slow. However, the wait times are growing, and that's not a good thing. I think that if we're really honest with each other about this, they always tell us there's too many retired people. There's too many disabled people. They always come out with these statistics. There's so many of them. There's so many retired people retiring today. They always come out with those statistics. But if we're fair about it, they knew exactly how many were going to retire. They didn't know how many were going to apply for disability, granted. But if you ever sit back and think about it, just one final thought on this before I go to the next video. And then we'll basically go live after that and answer questions. Did you ever think about this? Retired people, they know the moment that child is born, that child gets their name sent off to the SSA to get their social security number. They know exactly how many people are likely to retire. And the number only gets better by how many pass away before they actually reach the retirement age. So they know. And they know it's only going to get better based off of how many make it to the end of the rat race of living in America, right? They know. Disability, they don't know. But just like any analytical program, they know how many are likely to file each year. And it keeps shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. Yet SSI keeps going up. Immigrant situation. So the point there, just so you understand it, is, from my perspective, how could they not have been better prepared? They knew exactly how many there were going to be, minus how many could make it to 62. Disability benefits, they know about how much apply each year, and then they can make it easier or less, easy to go ahead and win disability benefits. So they've got a pretty good understanding on that. But the retirement, man, they're concrete on that. How did they screw it up? The problem with this whole situation of not having enough employees is that the fixing of somebody not getting their check on time is where you're going to start to see a lot more holes. So what happens? Let's say, for example, and remember, the Republicans are not good on this either. Republicans have hearings where they'll literally scream at the SSA representatives and tell them, you don't need more money. You don't need a bigger budget. You don't need more of this. You don't need more of that. They're ready to, the Republicans, they're ready to strangle the Social Security system with its ability to go ahead and pay out benefits. So they're not any good either in this. So the problem we face is, how do we as Americans actually protect the money we already paid into the system that's already been spent by the US government? How do we do that? Right? And the only thing I can think of that's an immediate hammer strike to this, ridiculous thing is to stop mass immigration. We can't afford all of these immigrants going on to SSI benefits that meet the requirements. We can't afford them. That's it. We can't afford them. You know, remember how everybody was talking about all Americans should have universal income, right? Where they get like a check for $1,000 every single month. Now we know $1,000 a month wouldn't do it. Wouldn't even come close. But that's what we were talking about back in the day. We were all gung ho for that. We were like, yes, this is the idea. This is what we want. Yes. The only people who really get that are essentially, right, that are, they're immigrants, asylum seekers, entrants, things like that. They actually get a universal basic income. So I think the problems we face are potentially only going to get better if we can get more employees. But the problems we face stem from specifically right now low paying jobs, but even more so, way too many immigrants coming to this country. And nobody writes an article on that. Nobody will write an article on how many immigrants are coming to this country and getting basically set up on, Social Security's supplemental security income. Now, there is a reason why most people who report on Social Security benefit, updates, new rules, new regulations, new policies, whatever, most of those people lean left. So if you attack mass immigration, you're attacking your current president. And so they, as that results, they don't want to do it. But I think it's important to understand that if we don't fix this immigration problem, it's going to make it even longer to get disability benefits. It's going to make it even longer for people to get, something fixed when it becomes wrong. Overpayments are a biggie, right? Underpayments, another huge one. People get, the wrong ruling. The check goes out. It's itty bitty. They got to appeal it. It takes months. It's a terrible situation. So that's the main thing that I see here. And I think that at the end of the day, the big thing that we can fix is basically the immigration problem. Now, as you've seen, President Biden has slowed the valve on how many immigrants are coming into this country, but it's not enough. It's not enough. We unfortunately, and remember too, as these immigrants continue to pop up and sign up and have access to supplemental security income, like massive amounts of immigrants, this is a very long shadow to people continuing to pop up, sign up to the SSA and get the benefits, pop up, sign up for the benefits and enroll for a 7-year period. So the issue that we're facing here, along with, of course, the fraud that they found where there was, homes that had thousands of fraudulent notices that there was somebody there to take care of them, that sort of stuff where they put fraudulent stuff on federal forms, they pass it through, boom, next, pass it through, boom, next. The reality is that the SSA is in the state it is because of the immigration policy problem that we have. As a result of that, it collapsed the economic structure of the employees and how much they wanted to work for the SSA. And that created a spiral, which then created more employees leaving, which then created an SSA in crisis. Is the SSA doing a little bit better on employees? Maybe a little bit better. But the problem is they're dropping like flies at DDS level. They just can't get enough of them. And it's tough. And I feel really bad for these SSA employees too, because at the end of it, they don't have a choice. They just have to do the job or leave. And if they're going to leave, they got to have something else set up, So these are the things that are really, really bothering me with what's going on with the SSA. That and some of the stuff that the judges do, that always gets to me. But the next video that we're going to talk about is something that is a heads upper to people who basically want to live outside of the country or people who are already living outside of the country with benefits. It's something that you need to be aware of. It's something that's important to you. So I guess we'll kind of go through that in the next video. Please remember, if you enjoy these videos, go ahead and go ahead and subscribe, head over to Disability Resolution, throw some stars up on the board. After the next video, we'll actually go and do the live video where I answer questions for free. You guys have a wonderful, wonderful day. In about 5 minutes, I'll be back. I'll put the link for the next video in the thing below. I do have to edit this video and cut out the intro because obviously the audio wasn't set up. But I will see you soon, and we'll go from there. Attorney Walter Hnot, and I'll see you in 5 minutes. Thanks so much. All right. Bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye.